The Manchester Chartist, Chapter 15. "That was a wonderful memorial meeting for Bess," Matthew said to Daniel. "Her friends all paid tribute to her. There must have been over 300 people present at Mary's, and more on the streets outside. You must be so proud of her. She made an important impact on a lot of people in her own modest way." Matthew and Daniel had just returned to the mill owner's house in Hardwick. Daniel glanced at Matthew. "I don't know how to thank you, Miss Rose, Miss Retherill. You've been kindness itself, and I'm grateful more than words can say." "Come, Daniel. Rose and I don't need thanks. We need to see you get on with your life, and we need to see young Daniel flourish. That's what Bess would want. That will be sufficient reward for Rose and me. Above all, we have to keep Bess's memory alive and try to continue what she set out to do." It was now January 1839. They buried Bess in the December with a quiet, simple ceremony, attended only by Daniel, Irene Rose, Michael O'Donnell, Matthew, Mary Upton, Clara, and Charlotte. Michael and the mill owner had arranged a memorial service so Bess's friends could celebrate her life and remember the mill worker and the many achievements she'd made in her all-too-short life. The dispute at the Nelson Mill had ended in victory for the mill operatives within hours of Bess's death, Josiah having taken control of the mill as he'd promised Matthew he would. In her address to the memorial meeting, Irene Rose had spoken about the Bess Ackroyd she had known. She spoke of Bess's hopes and aspirations for a brighter future for all working people. A future Bess knew could only be achieved if they all worked and fought together, if they educated themselves so they understood the economic and political forces arrayed against them and organised to combat them accordingly. The advancement of each and every worker to be achieved by the advancement of all. She talked about the quiet way Bess provoked discussion, provided unpretentious leadership, and encouraged people to come together, gradually building their confidence one step at a time, convincing them, through their own experiences, they could bring about progressive change. She detailed the way the young woman had influenced her life, and thereby converted a privileged and cosseted mill owner's daughter to Chartism and the workers' cause. Irene Rose then revealed they found a document in Bess's dress pocket following her death, a draft petition outlining proposals for a 10-hour day. She explained Bess had prepared the petition with Michael O'Donnell and had intended to put it before a meeting of the Gibraltar Mill operatives on the day of her murder for their consideration, amendment and approval. She read the document out. It proposed the operatives should be employed from 6:30 until 12 noon, with a half-hour break for breakfast at 8:15. They should have 1 hour for lunch and finish work at 6:30, having had a half-hour break at 3:15. On Saturdays, the working hours would be the same, save they finish work at 1 instead of 12, but have the rest of the day off. The hourly rate of pay would be adjusted so the weekly wage remained the same. Children from 12 until their 15th birthday would only be required to work 6 hours a day and spend the remaining 4 hours receiving education paid for by their employer. Their weekly wage would also be maintained. Irene Rose then explained she'd spoken to her father, and he'd agreed to implement these proposals in 2 weeks' time. The working hours will be placed in the mill entrance for all to see, alongside a dedication to Bess, the anniversary of whose death will be remembered with a paid holiday. Understandably, this announcement had been greeted with wonder and delight. Matthew looked up as his daughter approached, her arm linked in Michael O'Donnell's. Daniel stood up to greet them. "Michael, Rose, I'd like to thank you both. The things you said about my Bess were wonderful. She'd have been so proud and pleased to know how her friends regarded her." Rose put her arms around him and kissed him on the cheek. Bess was the most wonderful woman I ever met, Daniel. She changed my outlook on life. She opened my eyes. She's my guide and source of inspiration, and always will be. She took him by the crook of his arm. Come on, sit down. I have something for you. He did as she asked. She took a small leather-bound book out of her purse as her father and Michael looked on. It's a book of Shelley's poetry, she explained. I gave it to Bess for her birthday. She had it in her hand when she was killed. I think you should have it and treasure it in her memory. Pass it on to young Daniel when it's time to tell him about his mother. He opened the cover and examined the inscription, written in a neat hand. The message read, To my dearest Bess, the Manchester Chartist, on your 19th birthday, from a loving sister, to whom you have been an amazing source of enlightenment and an inspiration to action. All my love, your friend and comrade in arms, always, Rose Etherell. Daniel closed the volume and shook his head. I think you should keep the book, Rose. You're the Chartist now. Maybe you could keep it safe for our Daniel when he's older. You're the one who knows Bess's wishes in that regard better than any of us here, and you're one to lead struggle for her best of all of us. Irene Rose smiled. I'm not sure about that, Daniel. I'll try my best, but I'm going to need a lot of help, and that's a fact. She took the Irishman's hand affectionately in hers and turned to her father. I've requested Michael make me his wife, Father, and he's consented, she said simply. I'd be obliged if you give us your blessing. I need a working man of Michael's capacity to keep me on the right path if I'm going to come anywhere near meeting Daniel's expectations, and, I suspect, yours as well. If there's one thing I've learnt over the past few months working with Bess, it's that the rich and powerful view working people with utter contempt, and they will never allow them the vote or to take their rightful place in society without a long, hard struggle. We need the 6 demands of the Charter. For working people, it's a bread and butter issue, the means to win a future that isn't based on bare subsistence, but where decent homes, adequate fuel, good sustaining nourishment and leisure are regarded as everybody's right and not those of a privileged few. The freedom to starve is no freedom at all. She smiled at her father and friends. Universal suffrage, and through it a hand on the levers of political power, are the means whereby the oppressed majority can regain their dignity as members of the human family, the means to control and make governments and conquer blind anarchic economic forces, the means to make a better world where love, compassion, solidarity, mutual respect and a common sense of humanity and purpose count for more than the personal selfish acquisition of wealth and power over others. Working men will have the Charter, we women will have it, and I intend to play my part, no matter how long it might take. Author's Postscript. I hope you enjoyed listening to this book as much as I enjoyed writing it. It is, of course, only the first in a series. The story of the struggle for democracy and workers' rights continues with the second book in the trilogy of Chartism series, The Mill Owner's Daughter.